There's a misconception that we don't exist, that somehow our ability to excel at the highest level of our industry is limited, that overcoming barriers as a woman of color would be insurmountable. But what would happen if we decided to venture out on our own despite everything we're up against? I'll tell you. Welcome to the Black Girls Consult 2 podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Angelina Davis, a healthcare consultant, consulting coach, high performance fanatic, wife, and proud girl mom. I help transform female professionals into thriving solo consultants. And just like you, I'm wearing all the hats and doing all the things. So this podcast is to empower the busy female professionals to move past fear to start and grow a successful consulting business, despite the obstacles you may encounter. We'll dive deep into consulting practice, business strategy, mindset, and more. So grab your cup of coffee or tea if that's your thing, and let's get started. Hello, welcome to the Black Girls Consult 2 podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Angelina Davis. This is May of 2023, if you happen to be listening to this at some other time, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So for this month, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the whole topic and discussion around mental health. I was reading a statistic very recently that stated that 2 in 5 adults actually report experiencing anxiety and depression. And 2 in 5 teens actually experience persistent sadness or hopelessness that's exacerbated by things such as social media. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, even as adults, we also struggle with some of the issues around anxiety or depression or this feeling of sadness and hopelessness being tied to social media. And because we often spend a bit of our time every day or definitely every week on a social media platform, whether that's on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, we are consuming other people's perfect worlds, at least seemingly perfect from the outside looking in. Now, we know all of that is not true. We know it's not a perfect picture. We're all human. We all go through things. We all have our ups and downs. However, what I want to talk about is a lot of these different variables that come into play when it comes to entrepreneurship in particular, and especially in the consulting space where you're constantly being driven and pushed to excel and to show up as an expert. It can bring a lot of pressure your way that can cause a lot of stress and a lot of problems when it comes to maintaining your mental health. And I felt like it would be a great time for us to have this conversation over the month, tapping into some of the topics that I think are essential for us to discuss, things such as perfectionism and burnout and imposter syndrome and confidence or lack thereof, building resilience. These are all topics that I want us to discuss and dive deeper into during this month. And I thought a great way to open this discussion is to start with where many people end up and work our way backwards and talk about some of the things that impact our lives as we go along this business journey in particular. If any of you have experienced burnout, that's what we're going to talk about. You know that this is not a pleasant place to be. It is a space where you are completely drained and exhausted. You become ineffective and just unable to really carry out your day-to-day tasks because it is so overwhelming. And being at a moment like that can drain all of the motivation that you had to do any extra work, especially if you're building a business on top of a 9-to-5 or just building a business at all. That is something that is extraordinary. It's not the norm, and it requires motivation. It requires discipline. It requires you to show up and do work when you may not necessarily feel energized to do. But when you're burning out, it is hard to show up in that way. And I can speak to this personally from burnout that I've experienced in my 9-to-5 years past. Because in those instances, I had such a heavy workload on top of everything I had going on in my personal life with young children and a family and a husband and other family members that had need. And I was working another job, and it was a lot. And I got to that point where I couldn't really make everything work. I tried my hardest. And when you are someone who is typically an overachiever, you're going to try and show up in any way possible. You're going to do anything and everything that you can not to let anybody down, because you're used to being the one that comes through, the one that's able to do it all. In reality, we are not meant to carry that level of a burden. We are not meant to show up for everyone and not show up for ourselves. But when we put ourselves in those situations, then burnout is inevitable. There's only so much energetic capacity that you have to give, that once you tap out, then that's where you're hitting a brick wall. That's where it's problematic. And you don't want to get to that end state. I always talk about how I started in consulting, and part of the story of my beginning is the fact that I ended up with this massive workload because I came into a group and shared my client load with my mentor at the time. And the thing is that she had been under such significant pressure that she burnt out completely. And it was a shocker, especially when I was new to the space. I hadn't fully been trained. I wasn't ready to take on such a massive load. I needed help. But in that moment, she couldn't help me. And she couldn't help me because she had burnt out herself. And the one thing I said in that moment is that I may have made a decision to take this position. I may have decided to go into this industry, but I'm not going to let it do that to me. And seeing that firsthand gave me this new perspective and mindset to know that this is the outcome that I need to avoid, and then recognize what got her there and try my best not to recreate that same journey. So as we're talking about burnout, we have to start thinking about those things that really do cause us to expand beyond our capacity. Whenever you're pushing it so far that you've gone outside of the boundaries of where you can confidently do work, where you have the energetic capacity to do the things that are necessary to drive an outcome, when you get beyond that, then you are venturing into dangerous waters. And that's where we don't want to go. So let's talk a little bit about burnout and just what it looks like, just in case, because I'm hoping none of you have experienced it. I hope. But just in case you're unfamiliar, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the signs of burnout that we can experience so that you know when it's creeping up on you. Often when people talk about burnout, they're experiencing this level of detachment that's happening. There's so much going on that it becomes overwhelming, and the safety of detaching from it is your mind's way of protecting yourself and removing itself from harm. So you create this detachment from those things that are seen as stressors. Also, by creating this level of detachment, then you begin to lose motivation in the work that you're doing. It's almost as if you're moving through life and you're watching things happen, right? Things are going on, they're moving ahead, but you are somehow not moving with it. You don't have that motivation. You don't have that attachment. You don't have that satisfaction. All of those things are separating. And they're separating because, in all honesty, your body is just begging you to give it a break. Your mind is begging you to let it rest, to calm that level of stress that you are under. And many times when we are experiencing those feelings, instead of us reacting and finding ways to reduce the stress that we're experiencing, to begin to cope with it, what we do instead is to push harder. we say to ourselves, this is something that has to be done. It's going to be painful, but I need to hustle. I need to go hard. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to push when I don't feel like it. I'm going to do all these things that are meant for people who are truly trying to make it. I'm going to go against the grain. We say all that stuff. We say it all because somehow we think that for us, we can do those things that others have been unable to do successfully because we're special, right? We're somehow going to be protected in this little bubble from burnout because we feel as if we can handle it. But the thing is that we can't control our body's response. That's one of the things that we come to grips with. We can't control our body's response. So over time, as that workload increases, as you push harder to try and take on more clients, to try and add more services, to try and elevate the experience for the clients that you are currently working with, or you're trying to do more workshops or maybe even meetings or networking to try and drum up more business, all of that energy that you are expending without being able to properly cope, it's just going to cause you to go into a deeper period of overwork and detachment. And so then what happens is that we get to this point where we have created such a wide gap because we're so detached, so unmotivated, so lost because of this sense of overwhelm that we want to just close ourselves off and hide. We get to that point and then we just burn out. And when that happens, of course, things begin to stall. The work's not being done. The money's not being made. The momentum is leaving. We are finding ourselves moving backwards. And that is just not the goal. It's not the goal to push yourself to the point of overwhelm and burnout for the sake of trying to build your business. That we don't have to do because then you need a recovery period. You can't go back into it. You can't just go back into it because at that point, your body is calling out, your mind is calling out for you to take action. And taking action in this sense means you being able to give yourself rest, relief, and avoiding stressful situations. That's the thing. You can't push yourself harder because you need sleep. You can't do more because you need a break. You cannot keep pushing because you actually need to retreat. So the goal is that we don't get there because number one, our health is so important and getting to the point of burnout is not good for our mind or our bodies. We don't need to be in the state of high stress with cortisol levels just spiking all over the place and not getting enough sleep and running our body into the ground. We don't need to get to that point. We want to take care of our mind and our bodies. We don't want to get to this level of burnout. So let's begin to think about how do we avoid getting to that state? What are some of the things that we need to do to put in place right now so that we don't end up there? A thriving consulting business is built on a solid business foundation and a consulting code that leads you toward your ideal business and your ideal lifestyle. And the great thing about this code is that it works for any type of consulting practice, whether you help clients with professional development, business management, grant writing, IT, or something entirely different. This consulting code is not rocket science and is not beyond your reach. And when you crack the code, it can jumpstart the growth of your solo consulting practice and is what you need to know to get started and land your first clients and nothing more. This is a step-by-step process I wish I had so many years ago. And that's why I wanted to share this with you and how you can do this too. So if you're interested in starting your consulting business and creating a desirable offer to generate leads for your offer and to make sales, then the consulting code is your solution. Visit www.excelatconsulting.com for more information. One of the first things that we really do have to think about is the workload that we're creating for ourselves. And one of the interesting things about entrepreneurship is that the work is far greater than we would have ever imagined, likely when we started. I think that we often think about the work that we're going to do with clients and how we're going to show up and help them and serve them. But we forget about all the work that goes on behind the scenes, everything from the marketing to the sales, all the back end things that need to be in place in order for you to run a business effectively. All of that takes work. And in reality, although we wish we could outsource and delegate everything under the sun, that is not practical, nor is it smart if you're trying to build a profitable business. So there has to be a certain level of work that you are doing as the consultant and the owner and the founder of your business, of your firm, of your practice. And the thing is that this workload can be as heavy or light as you want to make it. The problem is that we often recreate business models that don't work well with our lifestyle in our current capacity. We do that because we're looking at somebody else. We're replicating what we see works for our mentor or our coach or another strategist. We're replicating that without understanding their lifestyle, their capacity, because everybody has a different capacity or personal bandwidth to do work. We're not taking any of that into consideration, nor are we taking into consideration what other help that they may have to help facilitate the outcome. So when we are recreating these things, we're building businesses that truly are requiring a level of work that's far beyond our capacity. And so when we do that, the workload is actually unsustainable. It's unsustainable. It exceeds your capacity to do the work. And when that happens, we try to make up for it in a lot of different ways. Maybe we work a little bit more. We try to push ourselves to work longer hours, to do more. Maybe we're paying some other people for help on the side, but then we have to make the money to pay for them. So that adds another level of stress and another stressor there to the equation. And we're doing everything that we know to do so that we can make sure that the work that we have agreed to is done and the outcome is delivered. But the thing is, if there is not a way to correct for those imbalances as they occur, and everything just remains at this high level of work that's unsustainable, you're going to burn out. There has to be a limit in terms of the work that you're taking on. There have to be limits to what you're able to do and provide in terms of marketing, in terms of sales, in terms of client delivery. All of those things have to have limits. I always like to tell clients that there are some things that are nice to have and things that you want to do, but you don't have to do them all right now. For example, with me in podcasting, one of the main reasons I chose podcasting as opposed to building out a YouTube channel or some other means of communicating long-form content to share thought leadership and ideas is because the podcast didn't require me to go on video. It was easier for me to do. It fit into my lifestyle and it was a sustainable workload that I could take on. And I know me personally, if I would have taken on a larger task of showing up on video and trying to produce a highly curated YouTube video, for me personally, at the time in which I started this podcast, that was not going to be feasible. So something like that would have been an added task that I would have created that in the end would lead to exhaustion and negatively impact my business. But I see people do this all of the time, constantly adding things that create this extension in terms of their workload without the capacity to actually deliver. And it all sounds nice. Ideas will come. You are a creative person, an innovative person. You're going to get ideas, but it doesn't mean that you have to act on all the ideas right away. So we have to learn how to compartmentalize those things. Think about what we can deliver based upon our capacity in the moment. And then plan how we can expand upon that over time. And typically expansion means moving in a different direction to do more, but then it also means letting go of some of those things that are less important or no longer a priority. So you're not just endlessly expanding yourself, because we all have a finite capacity. It's not infinite. You have to get to the point where you're eliminating some of the things that are not driving a return, so that you can do the things that truly bring you joy, or maybe you feel would be best for your business based upon the numbers and the data that you're getting in, or maybe the clients that you're able to land. Either way, your workload has to be sustainable. So one of the first things that we have to do is understand our current capacity, appreciate our current lifestyle, and then ensure that we are staying within our capacity to do the work. We have to do that on all fronts. We have to do that. That even goes for clients. We have to make sure that the services that we offer are still within our ability to sustain the workload. We have to. Now, in addition to just being able to maintain a sustainable workload, you got to have support. Support is not optional. It's not optional. As a matter of fact, I would say support is probably one of the most important things that you can have. Either support through a friend or a relative or a loved one or a coach or a mentor. You need support. You need somebody who is going to help you navigate some of, number one, the mental challenges that you're going through, someone to bounce some ideas off of, but you also just need the support in terms of getting the work done. You're not meant to do everything by yourself. And look, I am queen of trying to do it all, so I am recovering in that respect. But I always like to share that sometimes getting that support can also mean just getting the help to set up certain systems and automations that will also help you deliver things easier. I'll give an example of just using ChatGPT. This is something that's extremely popular right now with AI. Coming to the marketplace has been there for a while, but with people just recognizing it and definitely being in tune with what it can offer. One of the biggest benefits is that it can actually be a workhorse for you. When you're able to learn how to use some of these tools like artificial intelligence or maybe other automations that you can set up, those are things that can help make your life easier. Because then you don't necessarily have to hire somebody to do these tasks, nor do you have to do them, but you just have to establish a workflow that allows these things to help you in the process. And actually, it'll all work to your advantage. Being able to have both those, I would say, technological supports, as well as definitely your human support, your emotional support, those are going to be key for you to be able to maintain this sense of balance, this sense of harmony when it comes to your work, your business, and your lifestyle. You want that to be healthy. Focusing on creating this support system for yourself, both technologically as well as the human and emotional supports that you need. And last but not least, and this is one that's extremely important, and I need you to hear me and hear me clearly. You got to learn how to say no. You got to learn how to say no. When we're talking about sustainable workloads and having a supportive community, means that you have to say no to those things that are going to be far beyond your capacity. And you have to say no to those things that don't support your well-being. No has to become part of your vocabulary. And the thing is that many of us, especially in the space of consulting, we're personalities that tend to be more people pleasers than we actually want to admit. We're used to always trying to show up to do our best job. We're used to being the go-to in that space. And part of being the go-to or the go-to expert is the sense of accountability, or maybe I want to say ownership, that we take, and we want to be able to solve everyone's problems because they came to us with an issue. We want to be able to solve it. And when you are sitting in that type of position where people depend on you or people are looking to you for answers, you want to please people by showing up and giving the best of yourself. But the thing is, if you show up and give the best of yourself every time someone makes a request, you're going to find that you will burn out sooner than later. So you can't do 10 million speaking engagements. You can't show up for all the workshops and summits. You can't facilitate all the events and still maintain your sense of harmony, or if you want to say balance, I like to say harmony. You can't do that. You have to learn how to say no. You have to figure out those things that really do align with your values and your mission, and then choose to do those things that you feel like are going to be in alignment and in agreement with the outcome, the goals, the mission that you want to achieve. Those are the things that you want to focus on, because all the other stuff, even if it's a great friend, it may be nice. It's nice to do if you had the time, but we're sitting here talking about approaching burnout. And we want to avoid that. So it means that if you are being asked to do a talk or maybe serve on a panel or do a summit or some other type of event or project that has little to do with your business goals, that may be the one that you just can't do this time. You have to get comfortable with saying no, because that no is you saying yes to the fact that you are building your business and you're putting your not only financial resources, but your energetic resources into those things that you truly value, what you want to see grow. Because as you grow, as you're able to make more money and build your business and expand more team over time at the right and appropriate time to do so, as you're able to do that, then you can devote more time to some of the work and some of the asks that people may have that have little to do with your bottom line or your goals or your mission. But it's hard for you to give of yourself to that extent when you're still trying to build. You're still in a building phase. And so this building phase is going to require you to protect your energy. And that saying no is your way of protecting your energy. Because even if you expand your capacity, we talked about limiting your workload or controlling your workload so it's sustainable. Let's say you do that and you are able to increase your capacity to do work because you're controlling how much work is coming in. If you're saying yes to all these things, then that's just going to fill the bucket back up. So you're not going to have the added capacity. You're still going to be in this state of approaching burnout because it's unsustainable because you kept saying yes instead of sometimes saying no. So no is a word that we all have to practice. And it's not that you're saying no forever, but listen, we need to get comfortable with saying right now in this moment, I can't participate in your event because I don't have the capacity currently. Or maybe even think about some other ways that you can support them that don't require you doing something that's new, but that's going to require some high level of energetic investment. But the key here is that in order to avoid burnout, we have to think about how we are approaching work differently. And today we talked about some things such as having a sustainable workload and having a supportive community and then being able to say no. But I also want to dive deeper than that because it's not solely just these things, but there are a lot of other things that we do commonly that are just part of at least what we have always deemed to be part of our personalities that can drive us to create scenarios where we are overextending ourselves and creating extra work that's unnecessary. So I want you to tune back in because we're going to talk about more of this month. And I think these conversations are going to be really good because I want to dive deep into what it means to truly protect your energy. Because what you will find is that the energy that you have to do the work, your capacity to do it, and the energy that you have to do it is going to be the key to you being able to build a successful business. If you don't have the energy, if you don't have the capacity, you cannot do the work to build. And because our goal is success and longevity, we gotta have that protected. That is definitely something that we have to do. So this month is all about how we're going to avoid this whole stage of burnout that we talked about today. We're not going down that road. We're going to start, number one, by creating the sustainable workload, learning how to say no and making sure we have a supportive community around us. But then we're going to start talking about some of these other things that we definitely need to do. Those things like giving up perfectionism and building up our confidence. And we're not going to even talk about imposter syndrome. Actually, we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. But the whole thing is there are a lot of things that come into play. And what we have to do now is figure out how we can tackle all of these issues so that we can outlast our competition. All right. So I hope this episode has been helpful for you today as we kick off this month in terms of mental health awareness. And if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, leading up to episodes this month, make sure you reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn and share them with me. I love when you all do that, by the way. I love when you reach out. I've gotten to know some of you online and I've really just enjoyed that. So if you happen to have something that you think would be great to discuss this month, then let me know. I may be able to get it in if those episodes are not fully worked out because this is a special month. All right. I hope that you are having a great one. I hope your business is booming and blooming, and I will see you guys again next week. All right, take care. Thank you for tuning in to the Black Girls Consult 2 podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to leave your review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share it with a friend. We're on a mission to increase the success and longevity of women in consulting, and you can help us do that. Also, I'd love to hear from you, so let's connect at Dr. Angelina Davis on Instagram or LinkedIn. And don't forget to visit excelatconsulting.com for more information to support your consulting journey. Until next time, take care.